Listen carefully. Stop for a moment. Before you decide anything, watch this. This story didn't start today. Something here doesn't add up. At a crowded airport, surrounded by cameras, flashes, and voices calling their names, V and Jungkook did something no one expected. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. They didn't ignore it either. Instead, they reached out and took a Dispatch reporter's camera. And in that single moment, the internet exploded. Eyes PNAHAN PNONTON 2060 DTIK. Pay attention to what happened next. This part matters. Don't miss this detail. What you're about to hear changes everything. Because this was not chaos. This was not anger. And this was definitely not random. What looked shocking on the surface was actually the result of a long pattern that most people never questioned. Focus on this part. Look at this closely. Hear what most people overlooked. This wasn't a coincidence. Airports have always been dangerous spaces for idols. Not physically alone, but emotionally and mentally. Crowds push closer. Cameras zoom in without consent. Private moments become public property in seconds. For years, Dispatch has followed BTS through schedules, travels, and personal timelines. Sometimes respectful, sometimes crossing a line. And that line matters. Because on that day, V and Jungkook weren't reacting to one moment. They were responding to history. The camera wasn't just a camera. It represented control. Who gets to record? Who gets to publish? Who decides what the world sees? When V reached for that camera, his expression was calm. Not aggressive. Not panicked. Calm. Jungkook stood beside him. Silent, observant, aware. This wasn't impulsive behavior. This was a boundary being drawn. And boundaries are rarely loud. They are firm. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Sit with that for a second. Think about this carefully. Why would two of the most experienced idols in the world risk controversy in public if it wasn't necessary? Here's the part most headlines skipped. Dispatch didn't release the footage immediately. Fans noticed. Journalists noticed. Silence followed. And silence speaks louder than any statement. Because if the footage proved misconduct by V and Jungkook, it would have been everywhere. But it was. Instead, what surfaced were fragments. Angles cut short. Moments without context. That's not transparency. That's control. V has always been vocal without words. He doesn't shout. He doesn't explain himself to the public. He acts when it matters. Jungkook, on the other hand, has grown up under cameras since he was a teenager. Every step documented. Every emotion analyzed. When these two stood together in that moment, it wasn't rebellion. It was protection. Protection of space. Protection of dignity. Protection of a line that had been crossed one too many times. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Sit with that for a second. Think about this carefully. What does it say? When the people being filmed have to physically stop the camera themselves. The reaction online was divided. Some called it rude. Some called it brave. But very few asked the right question. Why did it reach that point? Because idols are expected to endure. Smile through discomfort. Accept intrusion as part of fame. V and Jungkook quietly rejected that expectation. Not with words. Not with statements. But with action. This wasn't about a camera. It was about consent. It was about control. And it was about two artists reminding the world that even global stars are still human beings. The moment passed quickly, but the message stayed. And maybe that's why this story feels unfinished. Because it isn't just about what happened at the airport. It's about what we've been ignoring all along. Look at what happened after the crowd moved on. Because moments like this don't end at the airport. They echo. Behind the scenes, staff members stepped closer. Security tightened. The atmosphere changed. Not because of anger, but because boundaries had finally been acknowledged. When artists draw a line publicly, industries take notes quietly. Here, what many fans didn't notice. No official apology came from Dispatch. No strong denial either. That silence matters. Because silence in media often means negotiation. It means something happened. That couldn't be easily defended. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Sit with that for a second. Think about how rare that is. This wasn't the first time BTS faced invasive reporting. But it was one of the first times. Members physically intervened themselves. Not managers. Not legal teams. Them. That detail changes the entire narrative. V has spoken before about privacy in subtle ways. About wanting moments that belong only to himself. Jungkook has hinted at exhaustion. At being watched even when he's silent. This moment connected those unspoken feelings into one visible action. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Sit with that for a second. Think about how much restraint it takes to stay calm in a situation like that. Fans often ask why idols don't speak up more. This is why. Because when they do, it doesn't come as words. It comes as moments that can't be undone. Moments that force the public to reevaluate their role as viewers. The camera was eventually returned. No shouting. No escalation. Just a quiet reset. And sometimes, quiet is more powerful than chaos. This wasn't a scandal. It was a signal. A reminder that access is not ownership. That fame is not permission. And that even in the most crowded places, some moments are not meant to be taken. The airport moved on. The crowd dispersed. But the question remains. Who decides where the line should be drawn? The reactions didn't stop when the video ended. They spread slowly, quietly, across fan spaces and media circles. Some people tried to simplify it. Others tried to twist it. But the truth sat in the middle, untouched. This wasn't about ego. It was about endurance. For years, moments like this have been normalized. Cameras moving closer. Questions asked without permission. What changed here? Was the response not loud, not dramatic, just firm. That firmness unsettled people. Because it challenged something familiar. The idea that public figures must always comply. V and Jungkook didn't argue their case. They didn't demand understanding. They simply acted, as if their space mattered. And maybe that's why this moment lingers. Because it asks something uncomfortable. Not of them, but of us. What do we expect from the people we watch? Endless access? Or basic respect? This moment offered no clear villain. No perfect hero. Only a boundary. Briefly visible. Before the crowd moved on. And yet once seen, it can't be unseen. Some stories fade quickly. This one doesn't. Because it wasn't designed to entertain.